I am pleased to welcome the Green Party's candidate for president, Dr. Jill Stein, and the Libertarian Party's candidate for president, former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. Tonight is the first of our three-part conversation. Part 2 will air tomorrow night right here on this program. Part 3 will be available for viewing exclusively online at our website starting tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. Pacific time, immediately following the West Coast airing of this program. For now, though, let's get this conversation started. We will focus tomorrow night on foreign policy, tonight then domestic policy, and I'm pleased to have both Mr. Johnson and Dr. Stein with us. Thank you for agreeing to do this. We're glad to have you on the program.
Thank you.
And thank you both for agreeing to give 90-second responses to these questions. The first question, we'll start with you, Dr. Stein. In a presidential election year where the two major party candidates have both had favorability issues and trust issues, why has your campaign not picked up more ground? It seems that this is a tailor-made election for a third-party candidate to rise.
It absolutely is. And the American people are clamoring for other voices and other choices. These are the most disliked and untrusted candidates in our history. Unfortunately, we have a system that is very carefully firewalled in order to protect the political establishment so that real challengers like Governor Johnson and myself are basically excluded from coverage. We have to fight very hard in order to get on the ballot, and we are excluded from the debates. This is a case in point. Donald Trump got $4 billion worth of free primetime televised media. Hillary Clinton got $2 billion. We got virtually none. I think the governor got a little bit more than I did, but we were basically shut out compared to the other two candidates. So, you know, this is what the American people are demanding. This is what we should be giving them. And thank you to your show and to PBS for actually making this possible.
A few more seconds you still have left here. Let me just ask this question quickly then. Some have suggested that the Democrats need to rethink. I saw a piece in the Chicago Tribune the other day that Democrats ought to press her to step down now because of this new scandal regarding emails. Do you agree with that assessment by the Tribune or not?
You know, my feeling is that the FBI's reopening the case is very poorly timed and irresponsible. This should not be done 8-9 days before an election. I think the issues have already been there and are not new to Hillary Clinton's voters, but I think that there were already enough reasons on the table for people not to trust Hillary Clinton and for her not to be in the White House, and I would say the same of Donald Trump.
Governor Johnson, same question for you. In this election season, when the table seems set for a third-party candidate to rise, with both candidates being disliked and not trusted, why not more success from the Johnson campaign?
You know, I'm going to label this as success. I got to tell you, 6 major newspapers endorsing my campaign, the Chicago Tribune being one of the larger newspapers, kind of summarizing what they've said is they said, hey, you know what? These guys, Bill Weld and Gary Johnson, may not win, but 2 former Republican governors that served in heavily Democrat states. These guys made a difference. The things they're saying, fiscally responsible, smaller government, lower taxes, socially inclusive, talking about marriage equality, women's right to choose, ending the war on drugs, military interventions. Look, let's stop with regime change. And that free markets. Free markets are a good thing. They'll result in more U.S. jobs, not less U.S. jobs. They said, look at what these guys are saying. In 10 years, all candidates will be talking about the issues that they're talking about now. So vote on principle, Americans. Vote on principle. This is how you're going to change things. This is what we're doing. Like I say, these guys may not win, but we're going to take a principled stand here, and we think that'll make a difference.
In 15 seconds, same follow-up for Dr. Stein to you. Do you think that the Democrats ought to be pressing Secretary Clinton to step aside, to do anything different given this new scandal regarding these emails?
Well, I think it's just very, very significant that he would raise this with 11 days to go, having dropped it earlier. Clearly, there has to be something there, and if he weren't to raise it, he would be under worse criticism going forward than he is now. So I just think that starting on day one, I think Hillary Clinton is going to be engaged in impeachment process if, in fact, she is elected.
Let's move on now to the next question. Governor Johnson, this question goes to you first. You oppose the minimum wage, but can anyone really live on $7 an hour?
Well, it's a minimum wage. It's labeled a minimum wage. So something I say tongue-in-cheek, and I do say this tongue-in-cheek, why not raise the minimum wage to $75 an hour? Well, I think everybody gets it immediately, and that is, well, gosh, how can we afford $75 an hour? Nobody can pay that. Well, how is it that government can assign a wage to begin with? I just think that the market should prevail. I think it results in less jobs for kids entering into the marketplace. And minimum wage, look, minimum wage is minimum wage. It's not livable wage. And for me, having been in the private sector my entire life, I had 1,000 employees growing a business from a one-person operation to 1,000 people. Minimum wage was never an issue because nobody got no one got even paid the minimum wage. Show up on time, wear clean clothes, good work ethic. Hey, we're not talking about minimum wage. We're talking about a wage that you can live on.
You got 30 seconds left. If the minimum wage, if your argument is that the market ought to decide, that means that poor people have their fate at the hands of the market. Is that really what you want us to accept?
Well, what I want people to understand is that we're restricting jobs, that the more you raise the minimum wage, the more and more automation occurs. I mean, you force the marketplace into automation. Do you know what's going to be one of the biggest disruptors here very shortly is the fact that the #1 occupation in the United States is driver. And because we're going to have automated driving, trucks, taxis, I will tell you this is going to be a gigantic disruptor moving forward. And fast food, that is also going to be subject to automation in a really big way. So these are issues. These are big issues.
Let me cut in with a slightly different question, still on the same topic for you, Dr. Stein. You call for raising the minimum wage, unlike Governor Johnson, but there are those who think that $15 an hour isn't even enough, that it hasn't kept up with the rate of inflation. How do you respond to that?
I think they're right, and I see $15 an hour only as a beginning, but it's an essential beginning. And we know that actually when we are priming the pump of the economy, by putting more dollars into the hands of consumers, we actually grow jobs. So it's a myth that decent wages depress the economy or suppress jobs. They're actually very good for the economy. And we have serious problems in our economy right now where basically 75% of our wealth is concentrated into the hands of just 10%, the upper 10%. And the lower 50% has 1% of the wealth. This is not sustainable. 43 million people are in poverty, and it's something like 13%, but it's twice as many African Americans. We cannot have an economy that only works for the very wealthy and the very few. This is an economy in free fall. This is a stagnating economy. We need our economy to actually reflect our values and to ensure that it's working for everyone, not an economy that puts profit over people. My campaign is calling for a different kind of economy and a different society that puts people over profit.
This question goes to you, Dr. Stein. You have argued that the U.S. should peg its gun control policies to other countries like Norway and Australia who establish gun buyback programs. Is that really the meat of your argument about gun control and gun rights and a gun buyback program? Is that really it?
No, by no means. No, I mean, that's actually just something we note in passing, that other countries have done buybacks. I don't think that will work for us. Right now, we are a very divided and fearful society in which racism abounds and bias, prejudice, and fear abound. So we actually call for the improvements that the American people are calling for. We're not talking about a radical departure. We're calling for ensuring that the gun show loophole closes, that there are background checks, and that we get automatic weapons, basically military-scale weapons, off the streets, and that we get rid of this impunity to gun manufacturers and distributors so that they are held accountable for the misuse of their weapons and for putting those weapons into the wrong people's hands. But we also call for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission so we can come to terms with the the abundant racism and fear that pervades our society. If we're going to actually move forward and become a less violent society, it's not just a matter of getting rid of the irresponsible guns out there and the guns that are in dangerous hands, but actually addressing the issues of fear, bias, and racism through a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a deep discussion about race at our community levels.
Governor Johnson, this question is for you. You, conversely, oppose any restrictions on firearms. I guess the question is, should we bear arms in schools or churches? Should people on the no-fly list be allowed to have guns?
Well, so first of all, I support the Second Amendment. Having said that, should we be open to a discussion and a debate on how we keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill? Absolutely. Should we be open to a debate and a discussion on how we keep guns out of the hands of would-be terrorists? Absolutely. As President of the United States, I would love to know what transpired between the FBI and the shooter in Orlando. I'd love to know what transpired between the FBI and the recent bomber in New York. Clearly, the system is working up to a certain point, but is it an issue of more resources, that it could be more effective moving forward? If that's the case, as President of the United States, I would allocate those resources. No automatic weapons are allowed in this country. Those were banned decades ago. And currently, semi-automatic weapons, the kind of which are now, many are labeled assault rifles, there are about 40 million rifles in that category. So if you're going to make those semi-automatic rifles illegal, you're going to make a new category, I think, of criminal in this country that otherwise would not be criminal.
Very quickly here, though, when you say we ought to be open to a debate and a discussion about whether persons on the no-fly list have weapons, why a debate or discussion as opposed to an emphatic no? No one on the no-fly list should have access to a weapon.
Well, because currently on the no-fly list are active members of Congress. For one thing. So one of the issues, I believe, is just a really an expedient way to address if you are on the no-fly list and shouldn't be there. Is there an expedient way that you can get off of that? And I believe that that's an issue of resource. But currently, it's a bit on the cumbersome side. And I'll just point out, current members of Congress currently on the no-fly list.
This question is for you.